I learned early that my role in the foster family was to be the scenery while my sister, Bianca, played the lead. I perfected the art of being invisible, which was the only survival skill that mattered the day I inherited $15 million. I didn't buy a mansion or quit my job. I just held my breath. But in a town like Larkhaven, silence is just a noise people haven't learned to decipher yet. And Bianca was listening. The rain in Larkhaven, Washington, was not a weather event, but a state of being. It was a constant, gray static that muffled the world, turning the pine trees into dark ghosts and slicking the pavement with a perpetual sheen of oil and water. I liked the rain. It gave me a reason to keep my head down, my collar up, and my existence contained. I was 33 years old, and I had spent the better part of 3 decades perfecting the art of being unnoticeable. My office at the compliance firm was situated in the center of the building, away from the windows. While other associates fought for a view of the dreary skyline, I fought for the corner where the HVAC hummed loudest. I liked the white noise. My job was to ensure that other people followed rules they barely understood, checking boxes on endless digital forms to prevent liability. It was precise, unglamorous work. It was safe. It was exactly the kind of life a person builds when they learn, very early on, that standing out only invites disappointment. I finished the audit for the mid-sized logistics company I had been wrestling with all week and checked the time. It was 5 o'clock in the evening on a Sunday. I was late, not for work, but for the performance, every Sunday. My parents hosted dinner. To call it a family meal was inaccurate. It was an audience with the Queen. And the Queen was my younger sister, Bianca. Driving to my parents' house in the suburbs, I practiced my breathing, the windshield wipers slapped back and forth, keeping time with my anxiety. In for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. It was a technique I had learned in therapy years ago, back when I still thought I could fix the dynamic between us by changing myself. Now, I knew better. I just wanted to survive the roast chicken without getting a migraine. The house was a colonial revival, painted a pristine cream color that my mother, Marla, scrubbed as if dirt were a personal affront. I parked my 10-year-old sedan behind my father's pristine truck and Bianca's bright red convertible. The convertible was new. Of course it was. When I walked inside, the warmth of the house hit me, smelling of rosemary and lemon polish. My father, Gordon, was in the living room, pouring a glass of wine. "There you are, Audrey," he said, not looking up from the bottle. "We were about to start without you. Bianca has big news." I hung my coat on the rack, careful not to knock over the decorative umbrella stand that served no functional purpose. "I am sorry I am late," I said. "Traffic on the bridge." Marla swept out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron that looked too clean to be used for cooking. "Traffic. You are always stuck in traffic. Audrey, you really should move closer to us, or get a job that lets you leave early, like Bianca." I did not point out that Bianca did not have a job that let her leave early. She had a series of passions that my parents subsidized. I just nodded. I will keep that in mind. "Mom." We moved to the dining room. Bianca was already seated, scrolling on her phone. She looked up, beaming, her face a perfect composition of high cheekbones and expertly applied highlighter. She was beautiful. She had always been beautiful, in a loud, demanding way that sucked the oxygen out of every room. "Hey, odds," she said. "Love the sweater. Very practical. It is wool," I said, taking my seat. "So, the news," Gordon boomed, sitting at the head of the table. "Tell her. Sweetie." Bianca clasped her hands together. "Darren and I are finally launching the venture. We are calling it Klein and Finch. It is going to be a boutique lifestyle consultancy. We already have 3 verbal commitments from clients." I kept my face neutral. Darren Klein was her fiancé, a man whose ambition was only exceeded by his inability to finish anything he started. That sounds ambitious. I said, "What exactly does a lifestyle consultancy do?" Marla sighed loudly. passing the potatoes. Oh, stop interrogating her. Audrey, you are always so literal. It is about vision. Bianca has vision. I'm just asking about the business model. I said quietly. Bianca waved a hand dismissively. We are curating experiences. Odds. You would not understand. It is not like your job where you just stare at spreadsheets. We are building a brand. Daddy, pass the wine? Gordon beamed as he poured her a glass. I am proud of you, princess. Taking risks. That is how you get ahead in this world. Not by playing it safe. I focused on cutting my chicken. The meat was dry. It was always dry. I remembered being 16. I had come home with a ribbon from the state science fair. First place, I had spent 6 months cultivating bacterial cultures in the garage, monitoring them every 4 hours, waking up in the middle of the night to record data. I had placed the blue ribbon on the kitchen counter, waiting for someone to notice. That same afternoon, Bianca had come home in tears because she did not get the solo in the choir concert. The entire evening became a triage operation for Bianca's ego. My father took her for ice cream. My mother spent hours combing her hair and telling her the choir director was jealous of her talent. My blue ribbon stayed on the counter for 3 days until Marla moved it to wipe down the surface. When I asked about it, she said she thought I had thrown it away. You are the smart one. Audrey, she had said, as if that explained everything. You do not need us to tell you did well. You know you did well. Bianca needs support. She feels things so deeply. Back at the dinner table, the conversation had shifted to the wedding. We are thinking Tuscany, Bianca said, looking at me with a challenge in her eyes. Or maybe polished industrial in Seattle. But that is so expensive. She let the sentence hang there. The silence stretched. Waiting for a wallet to open, Gordon cleared his throat. Well, we want you to have the best day. Honey, we will look at the numbers. Then, he looked at me. Audrey, you are doing okay, right? Rent is paid? Car running? Yes. Dad, everything is fine. Good, he said, turning back to Bianca. Audrey is so independent. She never asks for anything. It is a relief. Really, you do not need us, do you? Audrey, you are a rock. He meant it as a compliment, or perhaps an absolution, if I did not need them. They did not have to feel guilty about giving everything to her. I do not need anything, I said. The lie tasted like dry chicken and rosemary. 2 days later, on a Tuesday morning that was indistinguishable from every other Tuesday morning, my desk phone rang. The caller ID showed a local area code, but the number was unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail, thinking it was a vendor trying to sell compliance software, but habit forced me to pick up. Audrey Foster speaking. Ms. Foster, my name is Arthur Henderson. I am an estate attorney calling regarding the trust of the late Beatrice Gable. Do you have a moment to speak privately? The name did not register immediately. Beatrice Gable? I think you have the wrong number. I said, I do not know a Beatrice Gable. There was a pause on the other end, accompanied by the rustling of paper. She was a client of your late grandmother's friend, Mrs. Higgins. You assisted her with some personal filing and tax organization about 7 years ago. She resided at the Whispering Pines Assisted Living Facility. The memory clicked into place like a heavy latch. Mrs. Gable. She was a tiny bird-like woman who lived down the hall from my grandmother's best friend. I had gone to visit Mrs. Higgins, and she had mentioned that poor Bee was drowning in paperwork because her eyesight was failing, and she did not trust the staff. I had spent 4 weekends that summer sitting at a card table in a room that smelled of lavender and old paper, sorting through decades of receipts, dividend statements, and tax forms. I had organized them into color-coded binders. I had not charged her. I had just done it because the chaos made her cry. And I knew what it felt like to be overwhelmed and unsupported. I remember her. I said, did she pass away? Yes, 6 months ago. Mr. Henderson said, the probate process has been lengthy due to the nature of her assets. Miss Foster, Mrs. Gable named you as a beneficiary in her will. She was quite specific. She said you were the only person who ever listened to her without looking at a watch. I felt a tightness in my chest. That was very kind of her. Did she leave me something? A keepsake? I assumed it would be a brooch, or perhaps one of the ceramic cats she collected. Ms. Foster. Mrs. Gable had no living relatives. Her husband was an early engineer for a company that eventually became a key component of the semiconductor industry. She lived very frugally, but her portfolio was substantial. He paused. After the settlement of all debts, taxes, and fees, the distribution to you comes to $15,400,000. The silence in my office was absolute. The hum of the HVAC seemed to cut out. The gray light from the window solidified into a wall. I am sorry, I whispered. I thought you said 15 million. That is correct, he said. My hand was gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. This was a prank. It had to be. Bianca playing a cruel joke. This isn't funny, I said. It is not a joke. Ms. Foster, I can have a courier deliver the preliminary documentation to you within the hour, or you can come to my office, given the sensitivity of the sum. I recommend you come here. I went there. I left work in a daze, telling my manager I had a dental emergency. I drove to the address in downtown Seattle, a glass tower that reflected the clouds. Mr. Henderson was a man who looked like he was made of parchment and expensive wool. He sat me down in a leather chair that cost more than my car and laid out the papers. It was real. The numbers were there, black and sharp against the white paper. $15 million. My first reaction was not joy. It was not relief. It was a cold, sliding sensation in my gut. It was terror. If my parents knew, they would justify taking every cent. They would see it as family money. They would see it as the capital for Bianca's business, for her wedding, for the house she deserved. They would guilt me, badger me, and if that failed, they would hate me. And Bianca would be consumed. She would not just want the money. She would resent that the universe had given it to the extra child. Ms. Foster? Mr. Henderson asked. You look pale. I looked up at him. Nobody can know. I said, my voice sounded strange, metallic. Privacy is a priority for many of our clients, he said, nodding. The funds are currently in a holding trust. We can structure the payout to maximize anonymity. I need a wall, I said, a firewall, between me and everyone I know. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was Audrey the compliance officer. I wore my gray cardigans. I ate my turkey sandwich at my desk. I listened to my coworkers complain about their mortgages. By night, I was educating myself. I did not buy a sports car. I did not quit my job. I did not even tell Nina Hale, my best friend since college. Nina was loyal, but she had a kind heart that made her a terrible liar. If she knew, her face would give it away the next time she saw Bianca. I hired a fiduciary advisor named Marcus, a man recommended by Mr. Henderson who specialized in sudden wealth syndrome. I hired a therapist named Dr. Evans, who worked out of a converted carriage house and accepted cash. Together, we built the fortress. We paid off my mortgage first. That was the easy part. The bank simply received a wire transfer. I continued to make payments into a savings account so my bank statements would look normal if anyone ever snooped. I set up a donor-advised fund under the name the Gray Pine Trust. It allowed me to give money to charities anonymously. The first check I wrote was to the assisted living facility where Mrs. Gable had lived, earmarked for administrative support for residents with visual impairments. I felt like a spy in my own life. Every interaction with my family became a minefield. At the next Sunday dinner, Bianca was complaining about the loan rates for her business. The banks just do not get it, she said, stabbing a piece of asparagus. They want 3 years of tax returns. It is a startup. How can I have tax returns? You need a guarantor, Gordon said. Maybe we can look at the equity in the house again. No, Marla said, her voice tight. We agreed. Gordon, no more equity lines. We need to think about retirement, Bianca pouted. So I just give up? Is that it? I chewed my food, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could fix this problem with a signature. I could write a check that would clear her debts, fund her business, and pay for the wedding in Tuscany. It would be a drop in the bucket of the $15 million sitting in my new accounts. But I knew what would happen. It wouldn't be a loan. It would be an offering. And once the offering was made, the god would demand more. There are grants for female entrepreneurs, I suggested softly. I could help you research them. Bianca rolled her eyes. Grants take months. Audrey, I need capital now. Darren has investors lined up. But we need the matching funds. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly. You have savings, right? You never spend money. I froze. I have a retirement fund. Bianca, I cannot touch that. She scoffed. Right. Responsible Audrey, hoarding her acorns while the rest of us try to actually live. The guilt washed over me, hot and suffocating. Doctor, Evans had warned me about this. You are not withholding love, she had said. You are withholding a drug from an addict. I stayed silent. I let the moment pass. But I saw the look on my father's face. He was disappointed, not in the system, but in me, for not stepping up, for not sacrificing myself on the altar of Bianca, as was my designated function. The mistake, when it happened, was so small it was almost laughable. It was a Wednesday. I was tired. I had spent the previous night reviewing trust documents with Marcus, trying to understand the tax implications of a diversified portfolio. My brain was full of legal jargon. At work, I needed to update my address with HR for my 401k benefits. I had recently moved my legal mailing address to a P.O. box managed by Mr. Henderson's firm to ensure no bank statements ever arrived at my house. I typed up the form. I printed it. But I had also been printing a document from Mr. Henderson's secure portal, a high net worth beneficiary designation form that I needed to sign for the new trust structure. I had meant to send it to the secure printer in the legal department, but I clicked the wrong drop-down menu. I sent it to the shared printer in the break room. I realized my error 3 minutes later. I walked to the break room, trying not to run. My heart was in my throat. The printer tray was empty. I looked around. Jessica, the office manager, was standing by the coffee machine, stirring sugar into a mug. She was holding a stack of papers. Hey, Audrey, she said, I think this is yours? She handed me the sheet. It was the beneficiary form. My hand shook as I took it. Thanks, I said. Just some paperwork for a relative. Helping them out? Jessica smiled, but her eyes lingered on the paper. Must be a nice relative. That header says, Asset Management for Ultra-High Net Worth Individuals. I didn't know you had family like that. I forced a laugh. It sounded brittle. Oh, you know legal forms. They make everything sound fancy. It's just complicated probate stuff. Jessica nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. Right. Well, lucky them. Or lucky you. She winked. It was a joke. It had to be a joke. I crumpled the paper and shoved it into my pocket. Just paperwork, I said again. I went back to my desk and shredded the document. I watched the cross-cut blades turn the secret into confetti. But the feeling of exposure didn't leave. Jessica was a gossip. She wasn't malicious, but she traded information like currency by Friday. The atmosphere felt different. I was sitting at my desk when a shadow fell over my keyboard. I looked up. It was Darren Klein. Bianca's fiancé was wearing a suit that was slightly too shiny and a smile that was slightly too wide. He was holding 2 cardboard cups from the expensive coffee shop across the street. Audrey, he said, his voice booming in the quiet office, working hard. I see. Darren? I stood up, confused. What are you doing here? I had a meeting in the building. He lied. I knew he didn't. His business was run out of his apartment. Thought I would drop by. Bring my favorite future sister-in-law a latte. Oat milk. No foam, right? He placed the cup on my desk. He had remembered my order. That was a bad sign. Darren only remembered things when he wanted something. That is nice of you, I said, not sitting down. I am actually really busy. Darren, oh, I know. Compliance. Very serious stuff. He leaned against the partition, his eyes scanning my desk. He looked at the family photo I kept there. Me, my parents, and Bianca. He looked at the stack of files. "So," he said, keeping his voice low, "Bianca mentioned you were looking into grants for us? That is sweet. But honestly, we are looking for more. Silent partners." I crossed my arms. I told her, "Darren, my money is in a 401k. I cannot access it without penalties." He chuckled. Sure. But I was talking to a buddy of mine in finance. He said sometimes people have assets they don't talk about. You know, old family trusts, inheritances, things that pop up." My blood ran cold. I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Darren shrugged, taking a sip of his own coffee. "Nothing. Just making conversation. It is just, you are the quiet one. Audrey. The quiet ones always have secrets." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were calculating. He was fishing. He had heard something, maybe not the whole truth, but a fragment, a rumor. Jessica. She must have mentioned the ultra-high net worth form to someone. Maybe she had a friend who knew Darren. Larkhaven was a small city. The social circles overlapped like a Venn diagram of gossip. "I do not have secrets." "Darren," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my knees, "I have a mortgage and a cat. That is it." He pushed off the partition. "All right, just checking. You know we would take care of you, right? If you invested, we keep it in the family." He gave me a finger gun gesture and walked away. I sat down, my legs giving out. I didn't drink the coffee. I threw it in the trash bin outside the building when I left for the day. That evening, I sat in my living room with the lights off. The rain was hammering against the roof, harder than usual. I had $15 million. I could leave. I could move to Paris. I could move to New Zealand. I could disappear. But I couldn't. This was my home. These were my roots. And a stubborn, angry part of me refused to be chased away. Why should I have to run? I hadn't done anything wrong. I had just been lucky. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. The light from the screen was blinding in the dark room. I picked it up. It was a notification from social media, a platform I rarely used. "Bianca Foster sent you a friend request." My stomach dropped. We were already friends on Facebook. This was her old account, the one she used for investigative stalking of ex-boyfriends and rivals. She only used it when she didn't want to be seen on her main profile. Then, a message bubble appeared below it. "We need to talk." I heard something. I stared at the words. They were simple, but they carried the weight of a sledgehammer. She knew, or she thought she knew. I looked out the window at the rain-slicked street. The fortress I had built was made of paper, and the wolf was already at the door. I didn't reply. I put the phone face down. I was 33 years old. I had $15 million, and I had never been more afraid in my life. The phone rang 7 minutes after I saw the message. It was not the aggressive, demand-laden ringtone I associated with Bianca's usual crises, the ones where she needed a ride from the mechanic or a last-minute deposit for a venue. This time, she was calling via an encrypted app, the kind usually reserved for people having affairs or planning surprises. I let it ring 3 times. My thumb hovered over the decline button. "But the conditioning of 33 years is a difficult thing to break," I answered, putting the phone on speaker and setting it on the quartz counter of my kitchen island. "Hello, Bianca," I said. "Audrey? Oh, thank God." Her voice was breathless, pitched high in a register that signaled distress. But it was a polished distress. It was the voice she used when she wanted to return a dress she had already worn. "I have been sitting here staring at my phone," she said. "I did not want to call. I really didn't. But people are saying such weird things. Odds. I just wanted to check on you. Are you okay?" I picked up a dish rag and started wiping a spot on the counter that was already clean. "I am fine," I said. "I am just making tea. What are people saying?" There was a pause, a beat of silence where I could hear the faint hum of traffic on her end. "Well," she started, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Darren heard from a guy who knows a guy in legal. There is a rumor going around Larkhaven, a blind item, sort of, about someone local coming into a massive inheritance, like Lottery-level money. I felt the blood drain from my face, but I kept my voice flat. And? I asked. And people are saying it is you. Audrey. She laughed then, a nervous, trilling sound that grated against my nerves. Crazy, right? I told Darren, that is ridiculous. Audrey works in compliance. Audrey drives a 10-year-old Honda. If Audrey had money, she would have told us, we are family. She wouldn't hide something like that from the people who love her. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If I denied it, I was a liar who would eventually be caught. If I admitted it, I was a traitor who had withheld resources from the tribe. It sounds like a silly rumor. I said, you know how people talk in this town. I did not say no. I did not say yes. I stepped sideways. Bianca's tone shifted, sharpening just a fraction. Right, of course. But if it were true, hypothetically, why would you hide it? I mean, Mom and Dad are worried. They think maybe you are in trouble, or that you do not trust us. I closed my eyes. The accusation was wrapped in concern. A poison pill coated in sugar. I do not have anything to hide. Bianca, I am just living my life. Was there anything else? I have to be up early for work. There was a silence. Longer this time. I could almost hear her calculating, recalibrating her approach. No, she said, her voice turning cold. Nothing else. Just watch your back. Audrey, people get weird when they think there is money involved. She hung up without saying goodbye. The offensive began the next morning. I arrived at my office to find a bouquet of lilies on my desk. They were white, my mother's favorite, not mine. The card read, "So proud of all your hard work. Let's celebrate you for once. Brunch on Sunday? Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at the flowers. My parents had not sent me flowers since my high school graduation. Even then, they had been carnations. Lilies were expensive. Lilies were a statement. I sat down and logged into my computer, my heart doing a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. They knew. Bianca had reported back to headquarters, and the strategy had shifted from interrogation to seduction. I called my mother at lunch. I got the flowers. I said, "Oh, good." Marla's voice was bright, frantic with cheer. "We just felt terrible about how busy everyone has been. We miss you. Audrey, we feel like we barely see you. I saw you 3 days ago." I said, "But we didn't really talk." She insisted. "Gordon and I were talking last night, just reminiscing about when you girls were little. We want to take you to the Gilded Fork on Sunday. Just the 4 of us, like old times." The Gilded Fork was the most expensive restaurant in Larkhaven, a place with white tablecloths and menus that did not list prices. We had gone there exactly once, for Bianca's 21st birthday. "Okay," I said, because saying no would provoke a confrontation I was not ready for. "Sunday is fine." I hung up and immediately dialed Dr. Evans. I needed an emergency session. Doctor. Evans sat in her leather armchair, her face impassive as I recounted the phone call and the flowers. Outside her window, the rain continued its relentless assault on the Pacific Northwest. "So, Doctor," Evans said, clasping her hands over her notebook, "the dynamic has shifted. You are no longer the invisible utility player. You are now the bank. They do not know for sure," I said. "They suspect. Suspicion is enough to change the behavior." She said, "Audrey, I want you to visualize the family system. For 30 years, you have been the responsible one. Your role is to be low maintenance, to absorb anxiety, and to fix problems quietly. Bianca is the shiny one. Her role is to be the protagonist, to have needs, and to be rescued." She leaned forward. "If the responsible one suddenly has the ultimate resource, $15 million, what happens to the shiny one?" "She panics." I said, "She starves." "Doctor," Evans corrected, "or she feels she is starving, and the parents, the managers of this system, will try to restore equilibrium. They will try to transfer the resource from you to her. Not because they hate you, but because that is how the machine is built." I looked down at my hands. "They are going to ask for money on Sunday. They might not ask." "Doctor," Evans said, "they might imply, They might create a crisis that only money can solve. You need a script. I nodded. I need a boundary. You need a wall, she said. You can offer emotional support. You can offer advice. But you cannot offer your checkbook. If you open that door now, you will never close it. Sunday arrived with a gray, oppressive sky. I wore a navy dress that I had owned for 5 years. I drove my Honda. I did not wear the diamond stud earrings I had bought myself the week before, keeping them hidden in a velvet box at the back of my sock drawer. The gilded fork smelled of truffle oil and old money. My parents and Bianca were already seated at a round table near the window. Bianca was wearing a cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to sleep in. My father was wearing a blazer. My mother had had her hair done. Audrey. Gordon stood up to hug me, a firm, two-armed hug. He patted my back. Good to see you, kiddo. You look robust, healthy. Thanks, Dad, I said, extricating myself. We sat. The waiter placed a linen napkin across my lap. We ordered mimosas. When they arrived, Gordon raised his glass. To family, he said, his eyes misty. And to Audrey. We do not say it enough, but we are so impressed with you. You have built such a solid life. No drama, just hard work. Marla reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her palm was damp. We always treated you girls the same, she said, her voice wobbling slightly. I know sometimes it seemed like Bianca needed more attention, but that was just logistics. We always loved you exactly the same. I felt a sharp pinch in my stomach. The rewriting of history had begun. They were smoothing over the edges of the past, filling in the potholes of neglect with fresh asphalt, preparing the road for a transaction. I know, Mom, I said, taking a sip of the mimosa to avoid saying more. Bianca had been silent, staring into her glass. She looked pale, her makeup done with a lighter hand than usual, to emphasize the dark circles under her eyes. Is everything okay? B, I asked, following the script. She let out a shuddering sigh. I do not want to bring down the mood, she said. This is supposed to be about you. No. Tell us, Marla urged. We are all here for you. Bianca looked up, her eyes filling with tears that did not fall. It was a masterclass in restraint. It is just the business, she whispered. Darren and I are trying so hard, but the startup costs are spiraling. We had a venue lined up for the launch party, and they doubled the deposit, and the supplier for the merchandise wants payment up front. She looked at me, then quickly looked away. I am just so scared we are going to lose everything before we even start. It is humiliating. I feel like I'm failing, and everyone is watching. Gordon slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. You are not failing. The economy is tough. You just need a runway. Every business needs a runway. He looked at me. The look was intense, heavy with expectation. Audrey knows about business. She works in compliance. She sees the numbers. Right. Audrey, sometimes you just need an injection of capital to get over the hump. The table fell silent. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me. The waiter hovered in the distance, sensing the tension. This was the moment, the indirect ask. They weren't asking me to write a check. They were asking me to volunteer to write a check. They wanted me to offer, so they wouldn't have to beg. I took a deep breath. I remembered Dr. Evans. You are not the bank. It sounds incredibly stressful, I said, keeping my voice compassionate but firm. Starting a business is high risk. Most startups fail in the first year because of capitalization issues. Bianca flinched as if I had slapped her. I am not a statistic. Audrey, I have a vision. I know you do. I said, but if the debt is already unmanageable, more debt might not be the answer. Have you thought about restructuring? Or maybe scaling back the launch? Marla's smile faltered. Audrey, she said, a warning edge creeping into her tone. Your sister is in pain. She doesn't need a lecture on restructuring. She needs support. I am supporting her. I said, I am listening. Actually, I know a great nonprofit organization in Seattle. They offer free counseling for entrepreneurs in debt. They help negotiate with creditors. I could get you their number." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a script going off the rails. I had offered a solution that required work, not money. I had broken the rule. Bianca's face transformed. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, cold rage. "A debt counselor?" She spat. "You want me to go to a charity for failed people?" "It is not for failed people," I said calmly. "It is for financial health." "You are so cold," she said, her voice rising. "You have always been cold. You sit there with your steady job and your paid-off house, judging me. You think because you saved your pennies you are better than me?" "Bianca," Gordon said, trying to regain control. "Calm down. No." She turned to him. "She is enjoying this. Look at her face. She loves seeing me beg. She is punishing me. She is punishing me because you guys loved me more. And she knows it." The truth hung in the air, naked and ugly. Marla gasped. "Bianca, that is not true." "It is true," Bianca screamed, standing up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor, and now she is sitting on a pile of secrets, watching me drown. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the restaurant. Heads turned. The gilded fork was not accustomed to scenes. Gordon looked at me. He looked tired, old, and suddenly very angry. "You could have just been kind." "Audrey," he said. "I was trying to be helpful." I said. He shook his head, throwing his napkin on the table. "Money changes people. Audrey, I never thought it would change you. But I guess I didn't really know you." He signaled for the check. He paid. They left me there with my half-finished mimosa and the ruins of the brunch. I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The confrontation had been brutal, but it had clarified something. They did not just suspect. They were certain, and they felt entitled to whatever I had. But Bianca's outburst had revealed something else. The debt is already unmanageable. The supplier wants payment up front. When I got home, I did not cry. I went into my home office and locked the door. I turned on my computer. I was a compliance officer. I knew how to follow paper trails. I knew how to look for things that people tried to hide. I started with the public records for Larkhaven and King County. I searched for Klein and Finch Ventures. Nothing. No LLC registration, no business license. I searched for Darren Klein. I found a string of dissolved LLCs. Over the last 10 years, Klein Consulting, DK Media, Apex Lifestyle Group, all of them dissolved within 18 months of formation. 2 of them had tax liens filed against them. Then I searched for Bianca. I found a UCC filing, a Uniform Commercial Code financing statement. It is a public record that creditors file when they loan money secured by collateral. The filing was recent, dated 3 weeks ago. The debtor was Bianca Foster. The secured party was a company called Titanium Capital Solutions, a notorious high-interest lender that specialized in subprime business loans. The collateral listed was not business inventory. It was a 2024 Mercedes convertible, and I leaned closer to the screen, and all future inheritance and beneficiary interests. My breath caught in my throat. That was a predatory clause, one that was likely unenforceable, but it showed desperation. But that wasn't the worst part. I dug deeper. I paid a fee to access the scanned loan documents associated with a separate civil suit involving Titanium Capital, hoping to find a pattern. I didn't find the pattern, but I found a related document in the county clerk's portal regarding a property lien attempt that had been rejected. It was a guarantee form for the loan. The guarantors listed were Gordon and Marla Foster. I pulled up the image of the signature page. There was my father's signature, Gordon Foster. I stared at it. I had seen my father sign his name 1,000 times. I had seen him sign my report cards, checks, birthday cards. He had a distinct, jagged way of writing the G. This G was looped. It was soft. It was Bianca's handwriting trying to be Gordon's. I looked at my mother's signature. It was shaky, too precise. They hadn't signed this. Bianca and Darren had forged their signatures to secure the loan. They had put my parents' home, their retirement, their entire financial survival on the line for a business that didn't even legally exist yet. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a felony. This was fraud. If the loan defaulted, and with Darren involved, it certainly would. The lenders would come for my parents. They would try to take the house. My parents would fight it, claiming forgery. Bianca would go to prison, or they would look for a bailout. They would look for someone with $15 million to make the problem go away quietly, to keep Bianca out of jail and keep the parents in their home. That was the plan. They weren't just fishing for luxury money, they were fishing for survival money. My phone buzzed. It was Nina. "Audrey, are you sitting down?" she asked. "I am," I said, my voice hollow. "Don't look at the Larkhaven ledger." "Just don't do it. What is it?" "It is a blog post, the Larkhaven Whisperer column. Read it to me," I said. Nina sighed. "Okay." It says, "Which local wallflower, known for her exciting career in regulatory compliance, recently stumbled into an 8-figure windfall? Sources say she is hoarding the cash while her own flesh and blood face financial ruin. Rumor has it the money came from a lonely old client who was manipulated into changing her will. Talk about a quiet scandal. I felt a wave of nausea. Manipulated? I whispered. I helped that woman for free. I didn't even know she had money. I know, Nina said fiercely. I know that. But the narrative is out there. Odds. Wallflower. Hoarding. Manipulated. This has Bianca written all over it. She is controlling the spin. She is trying to shame me into paying. I said, she is burning my reputation to smoke me out. Audrey, this is dangerous, Nina said. People in this town are nosy. If they think you swindled an old lady, you are going to be a pariah. I am already a pariah. I said, I just didn't know it yet. I didn't sleep that night. I installed 3 security cameras around my house the next day. I changed my passwords. I contacted the IT department at work and asked for a security audit of my login credentials. Claiming I had clicked on a phishing link, I was building the wall higher, brick by brick. 3 days later, the letter arrived. It came via certified mail. I had to sign for it at the post office. The envelope was thick, heavy, and expensive. The return address was Vane Associates, a law firm I had never heard of, based in Seattle. I sat in my car in the post office parking lot and tore it open. Dear Ms. Foster, we represent Ms. Bianca Foster and Mr. and Mrs. Gordon Foster regarding the matter of the Foster family assets and the equitable distribution of shared familial resources. It has come to our attention that you are in possession of funds that, by verbal agreement and promissory reliance, were understood to be designated for the collective benefit of the Foster family unit. Furthermore, our clients allege that the acquisition of these funds may have interfered with prior familial financial understandings. We invite you to a private mediation to discuss a settlement structure that honors these commitments and avoids further public or legal escalation. Please respond within 5 business days. Sincerely, Preston Vane, Esquire. I lowered the letter. Promissory reliance. Shared familial resources. Interfered. They were legal terms, weaponized to sound legitimate. There was no verbal agreement. There was no shared resource. It was a bluff. But it was a bluff signed by a lawyer. They were suing me. My parents and my sister were joining forces to sue me for money that belonged to a woman they had never met. Money I had received because I was the only one who had been kind to her. I looked at the signature again. Gordon Foster, Marla Foster, Bianca Foster. The signatures on this letter were real. I traced the jagged G of my father's name. He had signed this. He had sat in a lawyer's office and signed a document accusing his daughter of theft. Effectively, I started the car. The engine roared to life, a stark contrast to the silence inside my head. I had $15 million. I had a fortress. And now, I had a war. The office of Hollis Ridge Legal Group was distinct from Mr. Henderson's parchment-scented sanctuary. It was modern, aggressive, and smelled of espresso and disinfectant. I sat across from Julianne Hollis, a litigator Mr. Henderson had referred me to when the word dispute appeared in the certified letter. Julianne was 45, wore glasses with frames that looked like they could cut glass, and she did not smile when she read the letter from Vane and Associates. She tossed the heavy cream paper onto the mahogany desk. "This is not a legal argument." "Audrey," she said, her voice crisp, "this is a story pitch. I do not understand," I said, gripping my purse strap. "They are claiming promissory reliance. They are saying I promised to support the family." Julianne leaned back, steepling her fingers. Promissory reliance requires a clear, definite promise and a substantial detriment incurred by relying on that promise. Did you ever sign a contract saying you would fund your sister's lifestyle? No. Did you ever verbally state, in front of witnesses, that your assets were community property? Never. I have spent my entire adult life trying to keep my finances separate. Exactly, she said. Legally. This letter is garbage. It would be laughed out of court. But Vane is not writing this for a judge. He is writing it for you, and he is writing it for the court of public opinion. She tapped the letter with a manicured fingernail. They are trying to establish a narrative. They want to paint a picture where the foster family is a single financial organism, and you are the rogue cell trying to hoard resources that belong to the collective. They are using terms like shared familial resources to imply that your inheritance is not really yours, but a windfall meant for everyone. It is strategic intimidation. They want you to panic and settle before a lawsuit is even filed. It is working. I admitted. I am panicked. Don't be. Julianne said, "We will reply with a standard denial. We will state clearly that no such agreement exists and that your finances are private. But Audrey, you need to be prepared. This is not just a legal battle. It is a PR campaign. And they have already started the ground war." Julianne was right. The ground war was happening on a battlefield I had abandoned years ago. Social media. That evening, Nina came over. She looked grim. She sat on my sofa, opened her laptop, and turned the screen toward me. "You need to see this," she said. It was Bianca's Facebook page. She had posted a photo of herself looking wistfully out a window, holding a mug of tea. The lighting was melancholic, filtered to muted sepias. The caption read, "It is hard when you realize the people you would take a bullet for are the ones pulling the trigger. Betrayal is a cold thing, especially when it comes from people who forget where they came from. Keeping my circle small today. Family first survivor. Truth will out." The comments were a chorus of sympathetic outrage. "Stay strong. B. You have always been the giver. Some people let money change them. Karma is real. We know who the real ones are. Sending love." She never named me. She didn't have to. In the small, incestuous ecosystem of Larkhaven, the person who forgot where they came from could only be the sister who had moved to the city. The one with the boring job and the paid-off house, the one who wasn't currently weeping on social media. "It is a soft launch," Nina said. Scrolling down, she is priming the audience. She is making herself the victim of a vague, cruel injustice, so that when the specific rumor about the money comes out, people will already be on her side. They will think you stole it from her. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my neck. She is rewriting reality. I said, and then, the love bombing began. It started the next morning. A package arrived at my office. It was a framed photograph of me and Bianca when we were 5 and 3, playing in a sprinkler. We looked happy. Attached was a note in my mother's handwriting. "Found this and smiled. We were so happy then. We can be happy again. Love you. Mom." 2 hours later, my father texted me. It was a link to a listing for a cabin on the lake, a place we had rented once when I was 10. "Remember this place? Thinking we should do a big family trip this summer. My treat? Just need to get the family back together." It was disorienting. One hand was slapping me with legal threats. The other was stroking my hair. It was a classic psychological pincer movement. Create fear with the lawyer, offer safety with the family. Come back to us, the message said, and the scary letters will stop. Just pay the admission fee. The climax of this phase came on Thursday evening. I was in my kitchen, chopping vegetables for a salad I didn't have the appetite to eat. My doorbell rang. I froze. I checked the camera feed on my phone. It was Marla. She was standing on my porch, clutching a Pyrex dish covered in aluminum foil. She looked smaller than I remembered, her shoulders hunched against the damp wind. I debated not answering. I could pretend I wasn't home. But my car was in the driveway, and the kitchen light was on. I opened the door, leaving the security chain engaged. "Mom?" "Audrey," she said, her face crumbling. "Oh, Audrey." She held up the dish. "I made your favorite. Lasagna. With the extra bechamel." I stared at the foil-wrapped dish. Lasagna was Bianca's favorite. I was lactose intolerant, a fact Marla had known for 33 years and forgotten for 33 years. "I cannot eat that." "Mom," I said through the crack. She blinked, confused. "What? Of course you can. You love my lasagna." I unlocked the chain and opened the door, not inviting her in but stepping into the threshold to block her path. "Bianca loves lasagna. Mom, I get sick if I eat dairy." Marla's face fell. And for a second, I saw genuine hurt there, not because she had forgotten, but because I had corrected her. I had disrupted the scene she had written in her head. I just wanted to do something nice. She sobbed, tears suddenly spilling over her cheeks. "We are so worried about you. Audrey, this lawyer, this letter, it is all a misunderstanding. We don't want to fight. We just want to be a family." She stepped forward, trying to hug me. I took a step back. "You hired a lawyer to sue me. Mom, that is not a misunderstanding. It is just formalities," she cried, the tears flowing freely now, a performance of maternal grief. "Gordon said we needed to protect Bianca. She is in trouble. Audrey, real trouble. And you are so far away. You have become so hard. Why are you so hard?" I looked at her. I saw the fear beneath the manipulation. She was terrified of Darren, terrified of the debt, and terrified of losing the status quo. "I am not hard. Mom," I said quietly, "I am just tired. Please take the lasagna home." I closed the door. I watched on the camera as she stood there for a full minute, weeping into the aluminum foil, before turning and walking back to her car. I sat in Dr. Evans' office the next day, recounting the lasagna incident. "They are escalating. Doctor," Evans said, "the gifts, the guilt, the tears, they are trying to bypass your logical brain and trigger your inner child, the child who craves their approval." It almost worked. I admitted, when she cried, "I felt like a monster. That is the design," she said. "But you held the boundary. That is progress. Now, however, you need to confront the narrative. If you stay silent, their version of the truth becomes the only version." She suggested a controlled conversation, a final sit-down, not at their house, not at mine, but on neutral ground. "The goal is not to convince them. Doctor," Evans warned, "you will never convince them that their reality is false. The goal is to state your position clearly, gather information, and demonstrate that you cannot be manipulated. You are there to be a reporter." "Audrey, not a daughter." I agreed. I sent a text to Bianca in the group chat. "Let's talk. Dinner. Tuesday at 7 p.m. Maple and Salt. Just the four of us." Maple and Salt was a quiet, dimly lit restaurant on the edge of town. It had high-backed booths that offered privacy and acoustics that discouraged shouting. I arrived 10 minutes early. I wanted the seat facing the door. When they arrived, they looked like a united front. Gordon in his blazer, Marla in a nervous flutter of silk, and Bianca. Bianca looked ready for war. She wore a sharp black dress and red lipstick. Darren was with them. I stood up. I said, "Just the four of us." I said. Bianca slid into the booth. "Darren is family," she said, "and this concerns him." I looked at Darren. He smiled. That same shark-like grin he had worn in my office. "I am just here to support my girls," he said. I sat down. I was outnumbered. 4-1. We ordered water. No alcohol. I needed a clear head. "Let's skip the small talk," I said, folding my hands on the table. Why did you send me a legal threat claiming I promised to support you? Gordon cleared his throat. It wasn't a threat, Audrey. It was an invitation to discuss the equitable distribution of family assets. There are no family assets. I said, there is my salary, which I earn, and there is an inheritance, which was left to me, specifically to me. Bianca laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound. To you, she mocked. Because you tricked some old lady. I didn't trick anyone. You have always been like this, Bianca said, leaning forward. Her eyes were hard, glittering with a resentment I had never seen so fully exposed. You play the victim. You act so quiet and meek, making everyone feel sorry for you. Poor Audrey, sitting in the corner. She gestured wildly. You think you had it so hard? You had the good childhood. Audrey. I stared at her, genuinely stunned. I had the good childhood? I repeated, Mom and Dad missed my college graduation to go to your dance recital. Because I needed them, Bianca snapped. I was under pressure. I had to be the star. I had to be perfect. You? You got to be invisible. You got to do whatever you wanted because nobody cared enough to stop you. You had zero expectations placed on you. Do you know what a luxury that is? To be free? I sat back. The breath knocked out of me. It was a distortion so profound it was almost impressive. She had taken my neglect and twisted it into privilege. In her mind, my isolation was freedom. Her spotlight was a prison. So because I was neglected, I owe you? I asked. You owe us for the years we spent propping you up, she said. For the years I spent being the one who had to shine so this family looked good. You stole the attention by being so damn needy with your silence. You made Mom and Dad feel guilty every day just by existing. And now you get the payday? She slammed her hand on the table. It is not fair, and you know it. I looked at my parents. They didn't object. They didn't correct her. Marla was looking at her napkin. Gordon was looking at Darren. They bought it. Or they needed to buy it to live with themselves. Darren cleared his throat, sensing the emotional temperature was getting too high for business. Look, he said smoothly, placing a heavy leather portfolio on the table. Let's take the emotion out of this. Bianca is passionate. We all know that. But this is really about opportunity. He slid the portfolio toward me. Audrey, we are not asking for a handout. We are offering you a seat at the table, an investment. I opened the portfolio. It was a pitch deck for Klein and Finch Ventures. The paper was glossy, high-quality stock. The graphics were sleek. I flipped through the pages. Lifestyle optimization, curated luxury experiences, projected Q. 1. Revenue, $2 million. I stopped at a page listing strategic partners. It featured the logos of a major airline, a luxury hotel chain, and a tech giant. Darren, I said, looking up, you have a partnership with Delta Airlines? We are in talks, he said quickly. Advanced talks. Verbal commitments. And the revenue projections? I pointed to a graph that went up in a straight line. Based on what? You don't have a product. We sell the brand. Bianca interjected. I am the brand. I closed the portfolio. I cannot invest in this. I said. Darren's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat. Cannot? Or will not? Will not. I said, the due diligence doesn't add up. Darren, these partners aren't real. The numbers are inflated. If I put money into this, and you misrepresent it to other investors, I could be liable for fraud. Gordon bristled. Don't use that word. Audrey, Darren is an entrepreneur. You just don't understand vision. I understand compliance. Dad, I said, and this isn't compliant. Darren leaned in. He lowered his voice, dropping the salesman act. The mask slipped completely. You know, Audrey, people with that kind of money. 15 million, right? They attract scrutiny, the IRS, regulatory bodies. They start asking questions about where it came from, how it was moved. He took a sip of water, his eyes locking onto mine. Wouldn't you rather handle things inside the family? If this goes legal, if this goes public, people start digging. Maybe they find things at your work. Maybe they find things in your past. It gets messy. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was a threat, a direct, extortionate threat. Are you threatening me? Darren? I asked. I am protecting you. He said, I am saying, invest $2 million in the company. We write it off as a loss if we have to. You get a tax break. We get a start. Everyone walks away happy. Or, we don't, and things get loud. I looked at my parents. Did you hear that? I asked them. He is blackmailing me. He is just negotiating, Marla whispered, refusing to look at me. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. The answer is no. No investment. No settlement. And if you contact me again, it will go through my lawyer. I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't look back, but as I pushed through the heavy oak doors into the cool night air, my mind was racing. 15 million, right? Darren had said the number, the exact number. Mr. Henderson had told me 15,400,000. I had told no one. The rumor mill in Larkhaven had guessed 8 figures, or millions, but nobody knew the specific number, unless someone had seen the documents. Bianca hadn't just found out I had money. She knew exactly how much. Someone had given her the file. I sat in my car, staring at the dashboard. Who? Mr. Henderson was a vault. His staff was vetted. Then I remembered the junior paralegal I had heard about from Julianne. Someone at Henderson's firm had been fired recently for improper data handling. But how would Darren know a paralegal in Seattle? Unless the leak wasn't from the law firm. Unless it was from the other side of the transaction, the bank, or... My mind clicked back to Darren's threat. Maybe they find things at your work. I drove home, the paranoia settling in like a heavy fog. The next morning, the threat materialized. I was at my desk, trying to focus on a risk assessment report. When my email pinged, it was a calendar invite. Subject, urgent, compliance review. From James Miller, Head of Internal Audit Time. Now. My stomach dropped. Internal Audit didn't send invites for now unless someone was being fired or arrested. I walked to James's office. The glass walls were frosted. I knocked and entered. James was sitting behind his desk. The director of HR was sitting in the corner. Close the door. Audrey, James said. I sat down. What is this about? I asked. James turned his monitor around. We flagged some irregular activity on your user account, he said. On the screen was a log of database queries. They were searches within our internal client database, a database containing the financial records of high-net-worth individuals and corporate officers. The searches were for offshore trust structures, Beatrice Gable, and transfer limits for unverified accounts. They were dated 3 weeks ago. I didn't make those searches. I said immediately, Beatrice Gable isn't even a client of ours. The query originated from your terminal. Audrey, James said, the login credentials were yours. I stared at the screen. 3 weeks ago, that was the week I had been distracted. The week I had printed the form to the wrong printer. Someone used my computer. I said, I must have left it unlocked when I went to the break room. Audrey, HR said softly, accessing client data for personal financial modeling is a termination offense, but more concerning is the nature of the searches. It looks like you were researching how to hide assets. I am not hiding assets, I said. I inherited money. I have my own lawyers for that. I don't need to use the company database. James looked at me over his glasses. You inherited money? Yes, a significant amount, and I have been trying to keep it private. James exchanged a look with HR. Audrey, we have received an anonymous tip via the ethics hotline. He said, the tipster claimed that an employee in compliance was using inside information to structure a personal windfall to avoid tax liability. The tipster provided details. Details like the amount? I asked. James nodded. Audrey, we have to open a formal investigation. Until it is resolved, we have to place you on administrative leave. Your access to the building and the network is suspended effective immediately. I felt the blood drain from my face. The tipster. It was Darren, or Bianca. They hadn't just leaked my secret to the town, they had leaked a lie to my employer. They were trying to get me fired. They were trying to cut off my income, my stability, my professional identity, the one thing I had that was truly mine. If I lost my job, if I lost my reputation and compliance, I would have nothing but the money, and then, the logic went, I would have to come back to the family. I would have nowhere else to go. I handed over my badge. I handed over my laptop. I walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with my mug and my sweater. It was the cliché walk of shame, the one I had watched others do. I sat in my car in the parking garage and screamed, a raw, guttural sound that hurt my throat. They were burning my life down. I drove straight to Julianne's office. I didn't care that I didn't have an appointment. They got me suspended. I told her, pacing her office floor. They called the ethics hotline. They framed me for data misuse. Julianne listened, her face hardening. "This is good," she said. "Good?" I stopped pacing. "I just lost my career." "Julianne, no," she said. "This is good because they overplayed their hand. This is tortious interference with a business relationship. This is defamation per se. And if we can prove the anonymous tip came from them, we have them on malicious intent. How do we prove it?" "We subpoena the records," she said. "But Audrey, you need to go dark, completely dark. No texts, no calls. If they come to your house, you call the police." I went home. I felt like a fugitive. I tightened the security. I called the alarm company and added motion sensors to the backyard. I changed the locks. Even though I knew they didn't have keys, I taped over the webcam on my personal laptop. I documented everything. I wrote down the conversation at Maple and Salt word for word while it was fresh. I printed the screenshots of Bianca's Facebook posts. I saved the calendar invite from internal audit. I was building a war chest, but Bianca wasn't done. That night, around 11 o'clock, my phone buzzed. Another notification. I picked it up, my hand trembling. It was Instagram this time. Bianca, she had posted a photo. It was dark, grainy, taken with a flash. It showed a street sign, Elm Street, and in the background, illuminated by the streetlight, was my house. My Honda was in the driveway. The caption read, "Late night drive, thinking about how some people forget their roots. Even when they are right in front of you, you can build big walls, but you cannot hide who you really are. Family truth, see you soon." She was letting me know she was there. She was watching. It wasn't just a post. It was a promise. She knew where I felt safest, and she was letting the entire internet know that my safety was an illusion. I went to the window and looked out through the blinds. The street was empty. The rain was falling, slick and black on the asphalt. But out there, somewhere in the dark, my sister was waiting, and she wasn't going to stop until she had everything. The printer in my home office hummed, a rhythmic, mechanical sound that usually soothed me. Now, it sounded like a countdown. I watched as the screenshot of Bianca's Instagram post slid into the output tray. The grainy image of my house, the street sign, the caption about forgetting my roots. It was all there, frozen in ink on bright white paper. I put it in a manila folder labeled Harassment Log. It was the 5th entry in 2 days. I drove to the Larkhaven police station at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a brick building that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. The officer at the desk looked bored. He was a man I recognized vaguely from high school. A year or two ahead of me. "I would like to file an information report," I said, keeping my voice level. He slid a clipboard toward me. "Name, Audrey Foster. Nature of the incident? Harassment? Stalking? Electronic intimidation?" He looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly as he recognized me. "Foster? You are Bianca's sister, right?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Even here, in the machinery of the law, I was defined by her. "Yes," I said. "Is everything okay?" I saw her post something about a family dispute. She posted a photo of my house at midnight implying she was watching me. I said, pushing the folder toward him, "I am not asking for an arrest. I just want a paper trail." He flipped through the folder. his expression skeptical. "It is just a picture of a house. Audrey, it is a public street. It is a threat." I said, "Please, just file the report." He shrugged and started typing. I watched his fingers move, documenting my fear in a database that would likely never be read. I left the station feeling colder than when I entered. I spent the rest of the morning fortifying my life. I called the alarm company and upgraded my package to include 24-hour monitoring and glass break sensors. I went to the hardware store and bought heavy-duty deadbolts. I taped over the webcam on my laptop, then I called Nina. "I need you to be my emergency contact." I said, "Audrey, you are scaring me." She said. Her voice was tinny through the speaker. "I am scared. Nina, if anything happens to me, if I stop answering my phone, if I disappear, I need someone outside the family to know. I am in," she said instantly. "But Audrey, you need to know something. Bianca isn't just posting online. She is messaging people." "Who?" "Everyone. She messaged my cousin. She messaged Sarah from our old book club. She is playing the concerned sister act. She is telling people she is worried about your mental health. She says you are having a breakdown." "A breakdown?" "She is saying you have become paranoid, that you are inventing enemies." I closed my eyes. It was a brilliant strategy. If I reacted to her harassment, it would look like the paranoia she was warning people about. She was gaslighting me by proxy. 2 days later, I had to return to the scene of my professional demise. James Miller from Internal Audit had summoned me for a formal interview regarding the data breach. I was still on administrative leave. But this was my chance to clear my name. I had prepared a defense binder. I had logs of my whereabouts during the time the searches were made. I had the affidavit from Julianne Hollis confirming I had my own legal counsel and no need to search for trust structures on a work computer. I dressed in my sharpest suit, a charcoal gray armor. I pulled my hair back tight. I needed to look like a compliance officer, not a sister. I parked in the visitor lot because my badge had been deactivated. I walked into the lobby, clutching my binder. The lobby was a cavernous space of glass and polished stone. The receptionist, a young woman named Chloe who usually smiled at me, looked down at her desk as I approached. "I am here to see James Miller," I said. She nodded without making eye contact. "He is expecting you. You can go up. Security has to escort you." I waited by the elevators, feeling the weight of the security guard's gaze on my back. Then the revolving doors spun, and chaos entered the building. It was my mother. She was wearing a raincoat that was too large for her, and she looked disheveled in a way that seemed performative. My father trailed behind her, looking grim. "Audrey!" Marla cried out. Her voice echoed off the marble walls. I froze. The elevator arrived, the doors sliding open with a cheerful ding. But I couldn't move. "Audrey, please!" Marla rushed across the lobby, ignoring the security guard who stepped forward. "Why won't you talk to us? We are your family." "Mom, stop," I hissed, looking around. People were stopping to watch. Employees with coffees, clients in suits. "You are destroying us," she wailed, grabbing my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Your sister is sick with worry. We just want to help you." "Why are you shutting us out?" I tried to pull away. "Mom, I am at work. You have to leave." "You don't have work," she screamed, and the sound shattered the professional silence of the lobby. "You are suspended. We know everything. Bianca told us you are in trouble." The security guard stepped between us. "Ma'am, you need to step back," he said to my mother. She collapsed against my father, sobbing loudly. "She is my daughter. She is having a crisis. We just want to take her home." I looked at the faces around the lobby. I saw pity. I saw disgust. But mostly, I saw validation. They were seeing exactly what Bianca wanted them to see. A hysterical mother trying to save her unstable daughter. I stepped into the elevator. "I am sorry," I said to the guard. "Please remove them." The doors closed, cutting off the sound of my mother's weeping. But the damage was done. I stood in the mirrored box, watching my own reflection. I looked pale. I looked shaken. I looked exactly like someone who was falling apart. The meeting with James Miller was a disaster. He sat with the HR director, a woman named Linda who had always been kind to me. Today, she looked wary. I presented my binder. I walked them through the timeline. I showed them the logs proving I was in the break room when the searches happened. "Audrey," James said, pushing the binder aside, "the evidence is compelling. However, we have a context problem." He tapped his computer. "We have received 4 voicemails in the last 48 hours from your sister." I felt a cold stone settle in my stomach. What did she say? "She is concerned," Linda said gently. "She claims you have been exhibiting signs of grandeur, that you believe you have inherited a large sum of money and are obsessing over trust funds. She asked us to be lenient if your work performance has suffered because you are having a mental health episode." I stared at them. It was a masterstroke. Bianca had taken the truth, that I did inherit money, and framed it as a delusion by calling HR. She wasn't just harassing me. She was poisoning my credibility. If I claimed I had money, I sounded crazy. If I denied it, I looked guilty of the data breach. "She is lying," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I did inherit money. It is real, and she is trying to destroy my career because I won't give it to her." James and Linda exchanged a look. It was the look you give to someone who claims they are Napoleon. "We need to conclude this investigation," James said. "For now, your suspension stands. We will be in touch." I walked out of the office. I didn't have a job anymore. I knew it. They wouldn't fire me today, but I was a liability. A compliance officer with a mental health issue involving financial delusions could not be trusted with sensitive data. Bianca had burned my career to the ground with 4 phone calls. I drove straight to Julianne Hollis's office. I sat in her leather chair and shook. I couldn't stop shaking. "She is winning," I said. "She took my job. She took my reputation." Julianne handed me a bottle of water. "She is not winning. Audrey, she is flailing. These are the tactics of someone who is out of options. She is trying to break you psychologically because she has no legal standing." She took a notepad. "First, we handled the leak. We found the source." I looked up. "Who?" "A junior paralegal at Henderson's firm named Chloe Mills. She was fired 2 weeks ago. Turns out, she dates a guy who plays poker with Darren Klein." I closed my eyes. "Larkhaven. It was a spiderweb. She didn't show them the documents." Julianne continued. "She verbally described them. She told her boyfriend about the compliance woman who got $15 million. The boyfriend told Darren. Darren told Bianca. So they don't have the papers." I said, "No, which is why they are desperate. They are operating on hearsay." Julianne leaned forward. "Now, we go on the offensive. I am sending a cease and desist letter to Bianca, Darren, and your parents today. We are citing defamation, tortious interference with your employment, and harassment. We are putting them on notice that any further contact with your employer will result in an immediate lawsuit for damages." She paused. "And Audrey? You need to stop reacting. Every time you engage, you feed the beast." I went home and did exactly as she said. I went dark. But silence is a vacuum, and Bianca filled it. That evening, I received a notification, not a text, but an email, from Bianca. Subject: Proof. There was no body text, just an attachment. I opened it. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between us from 4 years ago. Me: "Don't worry about the money. B: I will always take care of you. You are my sister. Whatever I have is yours." Bianca: "Are you sure? That is a lot." Me: "I promise. Family first. Always." I stared at the screen. I remembered the conversation. But it wasn't about money. It was about time. I dug through my cloud archives. Scrolling back 4 years, I found the original thread. Me: "Don't worry about the dog sitting. B: I will always take care of Fifi. You are my sister. Whatever time I have is yours." She had edited it. She had used photo editing software to erase the words dog sitting and Fifi and time, replacing them with generic promises of wealth. She was manufacturing evidence. I forwarded the email to Julianne. "Add this to the pile." I typed, "Then, The narrative shifted again. Nina called me at 9 o'clock at night. "Audrey, it is Darren," she said. "His loan defaulted. How do you know? My brother works at the bank. He shouldn't tell me this, but he knows what is happening. The bank called the note on the startup loan. They are moving to seize the collateral. My parents' house." I whispered, "Yes, and Bianca is spinning it. She is telling people that you caused the default. She says you promised to back the loan, and then pulled out at the last second out of spite. She says you are letting Mom and Dad lose their home to teach her a lesson." I felt a wave of nausea. It was the perfect trap. If the house was foreclosed on, it would be my fault in the eyes of the family. I had the means to save it, and I refused. Therefore, I was the villain. I needed to find something. I didn't know what. Just something that proved I wasn't the one who had drained this family. I went to the garage. I had a stack of plastic bins there, filled with old paperwork I had moved from my parents' attic years ago when they downsized to the Colonial. I sat on the cold concrete floor and started digging. I found my high school yearbooks. I found my college acceptance letters. I found the rejection letters for the scholarships I hadn't gotten. I remembered that year, 2011. I was 18. I had been accepted to the state university. I had applied for financial aid, but because my parents' income was just above the threshold, I hadn't qualified for grants. I had taken out loans, tens of thousands of dollars in student loans that I had spent 10 years paying off. I had worked 2 jobs, one at the library, one at a coffee shop, to pay for rent and books. I opened a dusty file folder labeled Tax Documents 2011. Inside were my parents' tax returns. I had filed them for them that year because they were confused by the software. I was 18, and I was already the family accountant. I flipped through the pages, and then I saw it. Schedule D. Capital gains and losses. There was a sale of stock, a mutual fund, the Vanguard Group. The sale date was August 15th, 2011. The amount was $85,000. I frowned. I didn't remember them having $85,000. They always complained about being broke. I looked at the notes scribbled in the margin in my father's handwriting. Transfer to S.J. Academy. My heart stopped. S.J. Academy. St. Jude's Academy, the private arts high school Bianca had attended. She had transferred there her junior year. I remembered the arguments. It was expensive. My parents had said they found a way to make it work. They said they took a second mortgage, but they hadn't. I dug deeper into the box. I found a bank statement from the same month. There it was. A custodial account under the name Audrey Foster. Education Fund. It had been opened by my grandmother when I was born. On August 16th, 2011, the account was liquidated. $85,000 withdrawn. On August 17th, a check was written to St. Jude's Academy. I sat there on the cold floor, the papers trembling in my hands. There had been a college fund, my college fund. My grandmother had left it for me, and they had taken it. They had drained my future to pay for Bianca's high school tuition, while I was scrubbing espresso machines at 5 a.m. to pay for textbooks, while I was signing promissory notes for loans that would shackle me for a decade. They had $85,000 of my money, and they gave it to her, because she wanted to go to an art school, because the public school wasn't nurturing enough for her talent. I felt a scream building in my chest, but it didn't come out. Instead, a cold, hard clarity settled over me. I wasn't the one who owed them. They had been stealing from me since I was 18 years old. I didn't call. I didn't text. I drove to their house. It was raining hard now, a torrential downpour that turned the world into a blur of gray and black. I parked behind Bianca's convertible. I walked to the front door and pounded on it. Gordon opened it. He looked haggard. He was wearing a bathrobe. "Audrey?" he said, blinking against the rain. "What are you doing here?" I pushed past him into the hallway. "Where is Mom?" I asked. "She's in the kitchen." "Audrey, you can't just barge in here." I walked into the kitchen. Marla was sitting at the table, clutching a mug of tea. Bianca was there too, looking at her phone. They looked up, startled by my wet hair and the fury radiating off me. "Audrey?" Marla said. I threw the papers onto the table. They scattered across the polished wood. The tax return, the bank statement, the withdrawal slip. What is this? I asked. Marla looked at the papers. Her face went white. Gordon came into the room. He looked at the table, and his shoulders slumped. I asked you, what is this? I pointed to the withdrawal slip. $85,000 from a custodial account in my name, transferred to St. Jude's Academy. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. The refrigerator hummed. The rain lashed the windows. Bianca picked up the paper. She frowned. What does this mean? She asked. It means, I said, my voice shaking, that I paid for your private school. I turned to my parents. I took out loans. I worked 2 jobs. I ate ramen noodles for 4 years. I spent my 20s paying off debt. And you had $85,000 of my money sitting there? And you gave it to her? Marla started to cry. It was her default setting. We didn't steal it. Audrey, she sobbed. We borrowed it. We meant to pay it back. You never paid it back, I yelled. You never even told me it existed. Gordon stepped forward. He didn't look sorry. He looked defensive. Audrey, listen to me. It was a crisis. Bianca was miserable at the public school. She was depressed. We had to do something. So you took my college fund? You were strong, Gordon shouted, his face turning red. You were always the strong one. Audrey, we knew you could handle the work. We knew you would get good grades no matter where you went. You didn't need the help. He pointed at Bianca, who was watching us with wide, terrified eyes. She needed it more. The words hung in the air. She needed it more. It wasn't just about money. It was the thesis statement of our entire family life. My needs were negotiable. Hers were essential. My sacrifice was the fuel for her survival. And you know what? Gordon continued, gaining momentum. We raised you. We fed you. You are complaining about money from 20 years ago when you are sitting on $15 million right now? You are selfish. Audrey, you are incredibly selfish. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised me. The man I had tried so hard to please with my grades and my silence and my compliance. I am not selfish. I said quietly, I am done. I reached for the papers. Leave them. Gordon warned. I am taking these. I said, these are proof. I grabbed the stack and turned to leave. Bianca stood up. You ruin everything, she screamed. You ruin everything. I walked out the door. I walked into the rain. I got in my car and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, watching the house. The lights were warm and yellow in the windows. It looked like a happy home. The process server came the next morning. He was a nondescript man in a windbreaker. He caught me as I was taking out the recycling. Audrey Foster? Yes, you have been served. He handed me a thick envelope. I opened it on my porch. Superior Court of Washington. County of King. Plaintiff, Bianca Foster. Defendant, Audrey Foster. Complaint for damages. I scanned the causes of action. Count 1, breach of contract, promissory reliance. Count 2, unjust enrichment. Count 3, intentional infliction of emotional distress. She had done it. She had filed the lawsuit. She was dragging me into the public record. She was claiming that I had promised to support her, that she had relied on that promise to her detriment, the business loans, and that I was now maliciously withholding funds to cause her pain. It was a lie, a monstrous, provable lie. But as I looked at the legal seal, I realized something. The truth didn't matter yet. The accusation was the weapon. She had pulled the trigger, and now I had to bleed in public. The lawsuit was a living thing. It lived in the stack of banker's boxes in my hallway. It lived in the knot of tension permanently lodged between my shoulder blades. It lived in the whispers I heard, or imagined I heard, whenever I walked into the grocery store to buy almond milk. Larkhaven was a small city, the kind of place where a civil filing was not just a legal procedure, but a community event. The court docket was public record, and Bianca had made sure the court of public opinion was well informed. I entered what Dr. Evans called survival mode. It was a state of existence defined by rigid discipline. I woke up at 6 o'clock. I went for a run on the treadmill in my basement because running outside felt like walking onto a stage. I worked on my defense with Julianne Hollis. I ate simple meals. I went to bed at 10. I did not go online. This was the hardest part. The urge to look, to see what she was saying, to defend myself against the lies, was a physical itch. Nina told me that Bianca was posting daily updates, vague, poetic musings about justice and the pain of being discarded by family. She was curating a narrative of martyrdom, waiting for me to snap and attack her so she could point a finger and say, "See? She is unstable." I refused to give her the satisfaction. My silence was the only wall I had left. Julianne's office had become my second home. We were preparing for the discovery phase, the part of the lawsuit where both sides have to show their cards. Julianne had hired a forensic investigator to look into Darren Klein. His name was Miller, a former federal agent with a face like a crumpled road map. We sat in the conference room on a rainy Tuesday. Miller slid a dossier across the polished mahogany table. "Your future brother-in-law is a ghost," Miller said, "or maybe a chameleon." I opened the file. It was a timeline of failure, but calculated failure. His real name is Darren Clinker. Miller said, "He changed it legally 6 years ago. Before that, he operated in Portland. Before that, Sacramento." I scanned the pages. DK Properties, Clinker Consulting, Apex Vision. He finds a partner, usually a woman with good credit or a family safety net. Miller explained. He starts a venture. He talks big about disruptive models and scaling. He gets them to take out loans, lease equipment, sign guarantees. Then the business burns through the cash, salaries for him, consulting fees for his friends, and folds. He walks away. The woman holds the debt. I felt a chill go through me. It wasn't just a bad business deal. It was a predation loop. "He has done this 3 times?" I asked. 4, Miller corrected. One of them filed for bankruptcy. Another one lost her condo. He is careful. He never puts his name on the primary liability. He is always the strategic advisor or the minority partner. I looked at Julianne. "Bianca is the 5th, I said, "and the biggest catch." Julianne said, "Because she has parents with equity in a home, and she has a sister who just inherited $15 million. Darren hit the jackpot." I felt a strange, twisting sensation in my gut. It was a mix of vindication and horror. Bianca was a monster to me. Yes, she was trying to destroy my life, but she was also being eaten alive by a parasite she thought was her prince. "Does she know?" I asked. Miller shrugged. "Hard to say. Usually, by this point, the victims are so deep in the lie they defend him to the death. To admit he is a con artist is to admit they have been played. It is a psychological break they cannot afford to make. She is both victim and accomplice," Julianne said, closing the file. "And that makes her dangerous, because she is fighting for her survival too. If she doesn't get your money, Darren leaves, and she is left with the wreckage." That night, my phone chimed. It was a direct message from Bianca. I had blocked her number, but she had created a new email address, b.foster@designmail.com. Subject, "A way out." I debated deleting it unread, but Julianne had told me to document everything. I opened it. "Audrey, this has gone too far. Mom can't sleep. Dad is seeing a cardiologist for his blood pressure. Do you really want to kill them? I am willing to offer you a deal. We drop the lawsuit. We sign an NDA. We never talk about the college fund or the inheritance again. You deposit $3 million into a family protection trust. We will use it to settle the business debts and secure Mom and Dad's retirement. That is all. You keep the rest. You keep your secrets. You go back to your life. This is a one-time offer. If you say no, we go to trial, and everything comes out." I stared at the screen. $3 million. It was a ransom note. It wasn't about promissory reliance or emotional distress. It was a transaction. Pay us, and we will stop hurting you. I forwarded the email to Julianne with a single note. "Extortion light?" She replied 3 minutes later. "Settlement offer. Aggressive. But it confirms they are desperate for cash now. They can't wait for a trial. We hold the line. I didn't reply to Bianca. I let the silence stretch. The war on the home front was quiet, but the war at my workplace suddenly became deafening. I was still on administrative leave, suspended pending the investigation into the data breach. I had assumed the truth would set me free. I wasn't in the building. I didn't make the searches. Then James Miller called me. "We need you to come in." He said, "There has been a development." I drove to the office with a knot in my stomach. When I arrived, the atmosphere was different, heavier. James sat me down in the small interrogation room again. Linda from HR was there, looking pale. "Audrey," James started, placing a single sheet of paper on the table. "We had the IT forensics team do a deep dive. They found a script installed on your terminal, a remote access Trojan." I blinked. "A virus?" "A specific tool." He said, "It allowed someone to control your desktop remotely. That is how the searches were made from your IP address while you were in the break room." "So I am innocent," I said, feeling a rush of relief. "I told you I didn't do it." "Yes," James said, "but that is not the development. We traced the source of the installation." He slid the paper toward me. It was an access log. The script was installed via a USB drive. The drive was inserted into your machine at 7:45 in the morning on the Tuesday in question. I was getting coffee then. I said, "I leave my door unlocked before 8. The security cameras in the hallway show who entered your office." James said. He turned his laptop screen toward me. The footage was grainy, black and white. It showed the hallway outside my office. A figure walked into the frame. He was wearing a janitor's uniform, a hat pulled low. He pushed a cleaning cart. He entered my office. He stayed for 30 seconds. He left. We checked with the cleaning contractor. James said, "They don't have anyone on the roster who matches his height or build, and they don't clean that wing at 7:45. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure was tall, slender. He moved with a distinct, loping stride, a stride I had seen 100 times walking toward my parents' front door. "It is Darren," I whispered. James nodded grimly. We cross-referenced the visitor logs. No Darren Klein signed in, but a Daniel King signed in as a vendor for the vending machine company at 7:30. We called the vending company. They never sent anyone. My hands turned to ice. He broke into my office. I said, "He planted a virus to frame me, to frame you, or to steal data." James said, "But given the specific searches, looking for offshore trusts, it seems the goal was to create a digital trail that would incriminate you, to make you look like you were hiding assets illegally. They wanted me fired." I said, "They wanted to cut off my income so I would be vulnerable." James closed the laptop. "Audrey, this is a felony, computer trespass, corporate espionage. We are contacting the FBI." I sat back, the room spinning. Darren had escalated from social engineering to actual cybercrime. He wasn't just a grifter. He was reckless. "Does this mean—" "Am I cleared?" "You are cleared," Linda said, her voice trembling slightly. "Your suspension is lifted immediately. And Audrey, we are so sorry." I stood up. I felt shaky, but also strangely powerful. "I don't want to come back yet," I said. "I need to take personal leave. Until this is over. Take all the time you need." James said, "We will handle the FBI." I walked out of the building. They had tried to frame me, and in doing so, they had handed me a weapon. Now, it wasn't just a civil suit. It was a criminal investigation. I drove to Nina's house. I needed to see a friendly face. Nina opened the door, her face tight with worry. "I have tea," she said, "and I have bad news." I walked into her cozy living room, sinking into the plush sofa. "What is it? Did Bianca post another photo of my house?" "Worse," Nina said. "She is planning a premiere." She opened her laptop. "My friend works at the local cable access station, but she also does freelance editing for influencers." She saw a rough cut of a video. "A video?" "It is an interview," Nina said. "Bianca, sitting on a couch, crying, with a local lifestyle guru named Chloe Ann. The title card is The Price of Blood. How My Sister Stole My Future." I rubbed my temples. What does she say in it? Nina hesitated. She tells the story of the college fund, but she twists it. She says you convinced your parents to give her the money because you didn't want to go to college. She says you were always trying to buy her love, and then she says you promised to pay it back tenfold when you made it big. And now that you have the inheritance, you are reneging on the deal. She is lying about everything. I said, I know, but in the video, she looks devastated. Odds. She has receipts, fake ones, edited texts, and Darren is in it too. He talks about how he tried to help you invest, and you laughed at him and called them poor people. I stared at the ceiling. She is going to release it before the court date. I said, to taint the jury pool, to destroy me socially so I settle. She is launching it on Monday. Nina said. I closed my eyes. Monday was 3 days away. I cannot stop her. I said, if I sue to stop the video, it looks like censorship. It makes me look guilty. So what do you do? Nina asked. I took a deep breath. I ignore her. I said, and I do something she would never expect. The next day, I contacted the Lark Haven Community Center. I spoke to the director, a woman named Sarah, who had known my grandmother. I want to sponsor a workshop. I said, Sarah was surprised. What kind of workshop? Audrey? Financial literacy for women. I said, specifically, how to spot predatory lending, how to manage debt, and how to protect personal assets in relationships. I wrote a check from the Gray Pine Trust, my donor-advised fund. I made it anonymous, but I added a stipulation. The workshop had to be free, open to the public, and advertised immediately on every bulletin board in town. I wasn't doing it to spite Bianca. I was doing it because I realized that if Bianca had known these things 10 years ago, if she had known how to read a contract, how to value herself outside of a man's approval, she might not be in this mess. It was a quiet act, a constructive act, but in Lark Haven. Nothing stays secret forever. The flyers went up on Saturday. Free workshop. Protect your future. Sponsored by an anonymous donor. By Sunday. The whispers started. People knew I had money now. People connected the dots. The anonymous donor, who wanted to teach women about predatory lending while her own sister was drowning in debt to a predator. It was a statement. It said, I will not give you fish, but I will teach the town how to fish so they don't get caught in your net. That Sunday afternoon. My doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Marla. Again. But this time, she was alone, and she wasn't holding a casserole. She wasn't crying. She looked terrified. I opened the door. Mom? Can I come in? She whispered. Please. I think I was followed. I pulled her inside and locked the deadbolt. Who followed you? Darren, she said, her voice shaking. He has been different since the loan defaulted. He yells at your father. He punched a hole in the wall yesterday. She sat on my sofa, clutching her purse like a shield. He says it is our fault. He says we aren't pushing you hard enough. He wants us to go on the news. Audrey, he wants us to say you abused us. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and rimmed with red. I can't do that. Audrey, I can't say you abused us. You were always the good one, the useful one. Then leave. I said, pack a bag. You and Dad. Go to Aunt Carol's in Spokane. We can't, she whispered. We signed the papers, the guarantees. If we leave, he says he will show the bank the signatures were real. He says he will testify that we were partners. He will ruin us. She reached out and grabbed my hand. Her skin was cold. Audrey, please, you have the money. Just pay him. Just give him what he wants, so he goes away. Fix this. You always fix things. I looked at her. I saw the woman who had raised me. I saw the fear that had paralyzed her for decades. The fear that had made her sacrifice me to keep the peace with Bianca. And now with Darren, she wasn't asking for justice. She was asking for a payoff. She wanted me to buy her safety. I pulled my hand away gently. No, Mom. Her face crumpled. You want us to be destroyed? I went to my desk. I picked up a folder I had prepared with Julianne. I am not giving Bianca money, I said, and I am not giving Darren money. I will not fund a terrorist. And that is what he is. I handed her the folder. But I will help you. Here is the offer. She opened it with trembling fingers. I will pay for a top-tier criminal defense attorney for you and Dad. I said, to fight the fraud charges when the bank comes. To prove Darren forged your signatures, I pointed to the second document. I will pay for a forensic accountant to untangle your finances. And the third document, and I will pay for therapy. For you, for Dad, and for Bianca. Unlimited sessions, top specialists. I stood up. That is the offer. Mom, professional defense, professional help. But not one single cent of cash goes to Bianca or Darren. Not one penny. Marla stared at the papers. He won't accept this, she whispered. It is not for him. I said, it is for you. You have to choose. Mom, you can keep protecting the predator, or you can let me help you fight him, but you cannot have my money to feed him. Marla stood up slowly. She looked at the papers, then at me. She slipped the folder into her purse. Thank you, she said softly. She walked to the door. Mom? I called out. She turned. Does Bianca know? About the college fund? That you took it? Marla looked down at her shoes. She knows. She said, she has always known. She said she deserved it, because she had a dream, and you just had grades. The door clicked shut. The response came 4 hours later. It wasn't Marla. It was Bianca. She called my cell phone. I let it go to voicemail. But she called again immediately. And again. I picked up. This is Audrey. You bitch. Bianca screamed. The sound was distorted. Raw. I assume Mom showed you the offer, I said calmly. Therapy? She shrieked. You offer me therapy? I need $3 million. I'm going to lose my car. I'm going to lose my status. You are already losing those things. Bianca. I said, Darren is a con artist. He is using you. Don't you dare talk about him, she yelled. He is a visionary. You are just jealous. You have always been jealous. You sit there in your gray house with your gray life, and you hate that I shine. You are not shining. Bianca. I said, you are burning. I want you back under this roof, she screamed. And then she stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. She had said the quiet part out loud. Back under this roof. It wasn't about the money. It was about the hierarchy. You want me back under the family. I said slowly, you want me back in my place, beneath you. Yes, she hissed. That is where you belong. You are the support staff. Audrey, you are the extra. You don't get to be the savior. You don't get to be the one with the power. I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. The confusion was gone. The guilt was gone. I am not the extra anymore. I said, and I am not your sister anymore. I am the defendant. See you in court. I hung up. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. Julianne was confident. We had the evidence of the forgery. We had the evidence of the computer trespass. The FBI was now involved, though no arrests had been made yet. We had the college fund records. But Bianca had one last card to play. 2 days before the hearing, Julianne called me. Her voice was grave. Audrey, get to my office, now. I drove there in a daze. When I arrived, Julianne was pacing. Vane just submitted a supplemental evidentiary filing. She said, what is it? More fake texts? No, she said. It is an affidavit from a confidential informant claiming to be a former client of yours. She handed me the document. Affidavit of John Doe. I hereby state that Audrey Foster, in her capacity as compliance officer, approached me to facilitate the laundering of illicit funds through a series of shell trusts. Disguised as an inheritance from a deceased individual named Beatrice Gable, I stared at the words. The room tilted. Laundering? I whispered. They are claiming the inheritance isn't real? That I laundered dirty money? It is the nuclear option, Julianne said grimly. If this allegation gains traction, the court can freeze your assets immediately. The IRS gets involved. The SEC gets involved. You could go to prison, Audrey, not for stealing from your family, but for financial crimes. Who is John Doe? I asked. We don't know yet, she said. But the details, they are specific. They know the account numbers. They know the trust structure. I looked at the paper. Someone had given them the blueprints to my life, and they were using them to build a cage. Darren, I said. It has to be Darren. Julianne nodded. He is trying to checkmate you. If you are under criminal investigation, you can't help your parents. You can't fight the civil suit. You are paralyzed. I looked out the window at the gray Seattle skyline. They weren't just trying to win. They were trying to annihilate me. But they had made one mistake. They assumed I was still the Audrey who was afraid of being seen. They didn't realize that by stripping away my privacy, my job, and my family, they had left me with nothing to lose. I turned to Julianne. Let them file it. I said, Audrey, this is dangerous. Let them file it. I repeated, because I know exactly where every cent of that money came from. And when we prove this affidavit is a lie, it won't just be a civil dispute anymore. It will be perjury. I picked up my purse. They want a war. I said, let's give them a war. The courtroom was a sterile box of blonde wood and fluorescent light, designed to strip human conflict of its emotion and reduce it to paper. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded on top of a 3-inch binder labeled Defense Exhibits A through Z. Beside me, Julianne Hollis looked like a predator who had just smelled blood in the water. Across the aisle, the Foster family sat in a row. Gordon looked stiff in his blazer, his jaw set in a line of stubborn grievance. Marla looked smaller, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit. Bianca sat between them, wearing a black dress that was modest, somber, and entirely out of character, beside her. Darren Klein leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his knuckles, projecting a confidence that made my skin crawl. Their attorney, Mr. Vane, stood at the podium. He was sweating. Your Honor, he said, his voice blustering slightly. In light of the new affidavit from a confidential witness regarding potential financial improprieties. Judge Sterling cut him off with a raised hand. She was a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and a gaze that could peel paint. Mr. Vane, I have reviewed the affidavit from your John Doe. It makes serious allegations. Laundering, tax evasion, shell companies. She picked up the document and let it drop back onto the bench. However, Ms. Hollis has submitted a rebuttal that is comprehensive. Julianne stood up. She didn't bluster. She didn't sweat, Your Honor. The defense has provided the court with the full, unredacted trust instrument established by the late Beatrice Gable. We have provided the wire transfer records from the estate's escrow account directly to Ms. Foster's trust account. We have provided the IRS filings for the current tax year. She gestured to the binder in front of me. Exhibit C clearly shows that the funds in question have never touched Ms. Foster's employer's accounts, nor have they moved through any offshore entities. The timeline alleged in the affidavit is factually impossible. The witness claims the laundering occurred in June. The probate didn't settle until August. Ms. Foster didn't have access to the funds on the dates John Doe claims she was moving them. Judge Sterling looked at Mr. Vane. The timeline is a problem. Counselor, a significant one. Vane loosened his tie. The witness is perhaps confused about specific dates. Your Honor, but the core accusation appears to be a fabrication, Judge Sterling said, her voice dropping an octave. A fabrication designed to freeze the defendant's assets and force a settlement. She leaned forward. Mr. Vane, if I find that this affidavit was submitted in bad faith, or that your client solicited false testimony to weaponize this court, I will impose sanctions that will make your head spin. I will refer this matter to the district attorney for perjury. Do you understand? Vane went pale. He looked back at Darren. Darren stopped tapping his pen. We understand. Your Honor, Vane whispered, the motion to freeze assets is denied. The judge ruled, banging her gavel. We proceed to the evidentiary hearing on the civil claims, and I suggest Mr. Vane, that you get your house in order." The court recessed for lunch. The hallway outside was crowded with the usual courthouse mix of bored lawyers and anxious defendants. Julianne steered me toward a conference room at the end of the hall. "That went well?" she said. "But they are desperate now. The laundering Hail Mary failed. They know they are walking into a buzzsaw this afternoon." We entered the conference room. I expected it to be empty. It wasn't. Darren Klein was standing by the window, looking out at the rain. He turned as we entered. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ladies," he said, "what are you doing here?" "Mr. Klein?" Julianne asked, her voice sharp. "This is a reserved room, just looking for a quiet place to think." He said. He looked at me. "Can we talk? Audrey? Just for a second?" "No lawyers, just family." Julianne stepped in front of me. "Absolutely not. It is okay." "Julianne," I said quietly. "Audrey, stay," I said to her. "But don't speak. I want to hear this." I walked to the table and sat down. I placed my phone on the table. Face up. The screen was black, but the voice memo app was running in the background. Washington is a two-party consent state for recording. But Julianne had already informed Mr. Vane that all interactions between the parties would be documented for quality assurance, a clause Vane had arrogantly agreed to in the pretrial stipulation. "What do you want?" "Darren?" I asked. He sat across from me, up close. I could see the cracks in his armor. The suit was expensive, but his shirt collar was slightly frayed. He looked tired. "Look," he said, leaning in. "Vane is an idiot. He is going to get us all killed in there. The judge hates him." He spread his hands. "I am a businessman. Audrey, you know that. I look at the numbers. And right now, the numbers say we are all going to lose. You are going to spend a fortune on legal fees. We are going to get sanctioned. Nobody wins." "So?" I asked. "So let's make a deal. Right here. Forget the 3 million. Give me 1 million. Cash. Today." I stared at him. 1 million. I repeated. "It is a bargain," he said. "Think about it. I make the lawsuit go away. I make the affidavit go away. Yeah, I can do that. I tell Bianca to drop the harassment suit. You walk out of here clean." "And what about Bianca?" I asked. "Does she know you are bargaining her down to a discount price?" He laughed, a short, dismissive bark. "Bianca doesn't know what she wants. She is emotional. She thinks this is about justice or respect or whatever." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Between us? This was never about justice. It is leverage, Audrey. It is a pressure valve. We needed to unlock the money. You were the vault. And we needed the combination. That is all. It is just business." I felt a cold clarity wash over me. "It is just business." I echoed. The fake texts, the harassment, the attempt to get me fired, framing me for a felony, leverage, he said with a shrug. "Standard negotiation tactics. But now we are at the table. So, do we have a deal? 1 million to save your family from public humiliation?" I looked at him. I looked at the man who had turned my sister into a weapon and my parents into hostages. "No, Darren," I said, "we don't have a deal." He sneered. "Then enjoy the show. Because even if we lose, we are going to drag your name through the mud until you can't get a job at a fast food joint." He stood up and stormed out. Julianne looked at me and smiled grimly. "We got him," she said. We didn't go back to the courtroom immediately. We asked for a 5-minute delay. Julianne walked to the witness waiting area where Bianca was sitting alone, scrolling frantically on her phone. Gordon and Marla were down the hall, arguing in hushed tones. Bianca looked up as we approached. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "What do you want?" she snapped. "Here to gloat?" "No," I said. "Here to help you." She scoffed. "Help me? You ruined me. Listen to this," I said. I played the recording. Darren's voice filled the small waiting area. Clear and undeniable. Bianca doesn't know what she wants. She is emotional. This was never about justice. It is leverage. Audrey. It is just business. Bianca went still. She stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. 1 million. I make the lawsuit go away. The recording ended. He offered to settle for $1 million. I said, without you. He admitted the whole thing was a shakedown. Bianca looked up at me. Her face was pale, stripped of the anger that usually animated it. For a moment, she just looked young and terrified. He wouldn't. She whispered, he loves me. He is doing this for us. He is doing this for the money. Bianca, I said, he is using you as a battering ram, and when he realizes he can't break down the door, he is going to leave you in the rubble. She shook her head, tears spilling over. No, you're lying. This is a deep fake. You edited it, just like you edit everything. I put the phone away. It is real. And deep down. You know it. You know he forged Dad's signature. You know the business is a shell. You know you are the mark. She stood up, her hands balling into fists. Get away from me, she screamed. You are just trying to turn me against him. You want me to be alone like you. She pushed past me and ran down the hall toward the courtroom. Julianne watched her go. She knows? Julianne said. Yes, I said. But she can't admit it. If she admits it, she has to admit that she destroyed her family for a man who sees her as an ATM. That is a reality she isn't ready to live in. The afternoon session began. The air in the courtroom was heavy, charged with the electricity of a coming storm. We are here to address the plaintiff's claims of promissory reliance. Judge Sterling announced, Mr. Vane, call your first witness. Vane called Bianca. She took the stand. She looked shaky. She avoided looking at Darren, who was sitting in the front row, watching her with a hawk-like intensity. Ms. Foster, Vane began, did your sister, Audrey Foster, make specific promises to support you financially? Yes, Bianca whispered. Could you speak up? Yes, she said. Louder. She promised. Multiple times. She said that whatever she had was mine. She said family comes first. And did you rely on these promises when you took out loans for your business? Yes. I thought I had a safety net. I thought my sister had my back. And when you discovered she had inherited $15 million, did she offer to honor that promise? No, she hid it, and then she mocked me. She told me to go to a charity. She looked at me then, and the hatred flared up again, fueled by the fresh pain of the recording she had just heard. She needed to hate me to avoid hating herself. She stole my future, she said, her voice trembling. She has always stolen from me. Your witness. Vane said. Julianne stood up. She walked to the podium. She didn't look at Bianca. She looked at the judge. Your Honor, the defense would like to submit a statement of facts regarding the financial history of the Foster family. She handed a document to the bailiff. This statement outlines the flow of funds from the defendant's custodial education account, funds that were legally hers, to the St. Jude's Academy for the benefit of the plaintiff, Bianca Foster. Gordon let out a gasp in the gallery. Marla put her hand over her mouth. Julianne continued. In 2011, $85,000 was removed from Audrey Foster's college fund without her knowledge or consent. This money paid for the plaintiff's private arts education. The defendant, meanwhile, took out student loans which she paid off over 10 years. Julianne looked at Bianca. Ms. Foster, do you recognize this transaction? Bianca shifted in her seat. I knew about it, but that was family money. It wasn't hers. It was in a custodial account under her name. Julianne said, but let's move to the present. You claim my client promised to support you via text message. Julianne pulled up a projection on the courtroom screen. It showed the screenshot Bianca had submitted as evidence. Me. Don't worry about the money. B. I will always take care of you. Now. Julianne said, let's look at the forensic extraction from the defendant's cloud backup. She clicked a button. A new image appeared side by side. Me. Don't worry about the dog sitting. B. I will always take care of Fifi. The courtroom was silent. The difference was stark. The forgery was clumsy when viewed in high resolution. Ms. Foster, Julianne said, her voice like ice. Did you edit these messages? Bianca looked at the screen. She looked at Darren. Darren was staring at his shoes. I just wanted to show the spirit of what she said. Bianca stammered. She meant money. She always acted like she would help. I just made it clearer. So you fabricated evidence? Julianne asked. I clarified the truth, Bianca shouted. Why does everyone care about the technicalities? She has $15 million. She doesn't need it. I need it. Judge Sterling leaned forward. Ms. Foster, you are admitting to altering evidence submitted to a court of law? Bianca looked at the judge, panic rising in her chest. It is not fair, she wailed. She tricked the old lady. She tricked everyone. Why am I the one on trial? Because you are the one lying, Judge Sterling said. The judge turned to Vane. Counselor, your case is built on forged documents and perjured testimony. I am dismissing the claims with prejudice, and I am referring your client, and potentially you, for investigation regarding litigation fraud. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. The courtroom dissolved into chaos. Vane was frantically packing his briefcase. Darren was already walking toward the exit, not waiting for Bianca. Bianca sat in the witness box, frozen. She had lost. It wasn't just a legal loss. It was a total collapse of her reality. Gordon and Marla stood up. Gordon looked furious. He pointed a finger at me. Are you happy? He shouted across the aisle. You destroyed her. You destroyed this family. Julianne stepped in front of me, but I moved her aside. I stood up and walked to the bar that separated the well of the court from the gallery. I didn't destroy anything. Dad, I said, I just turned on the lights. Marla was weeping. She looked at Bianca, who was still sitting in the chair, looking small and broken. Then she looked at me. Audrey, she whispered, we just wanted everyone to be okay. No, Mom, I said, you wanted Bianca to be okay, and you wanted me to pay for it, just like with the college fund, just like always. Marla flinched. The truth hit her. Stripped of the family sacrifice narrative she had hidden behind for decades. I couldn't handle her, Marla admitted, her voice shaking. She was so loud. She needed so much. You were the easy one. Audrey, you were quiet. I didn't think you minded. I did mind, I said. I just knew you wouldn't listen. Gordon grabbed Marla's arm. Don't talk to her. Marla, she is dead to us. He tried to pull her away, but Marla resisted. She looked at Darren, who was slipping out the back door. He is leaving, she said. Gordon, he is leaving. I walked out into the hallway. Bianca followed a moment later. She looked wild. Her hair was coming loose from its pins. She cornered me near the elevators. You think you won? She hissed. You think this is over? It is over. Bianca, I said. The judge dismissed it. I will appeal. I will tell everyone. I will go on every podcast, every news station. I will make you the most hated woman in America. I looked at her. I saw the desperation. She had no money. Her fiancé was halfway to the airport. Her parents were facing financial ruin from the guarantees. She was holding on to the anger because it was the only thing keeping her upright. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I am giving you one last option, I said. She slapped the folder out of my hand, papers scattered on the floor. I don't want your charity. It isn't charity, I said. It is a settlement. I knelt down and picked up the papers. Mutual dismissal of all claims, I said, including my defamation suit against you. A strict non-disparagement agreement. You stop posting. I stop suing. And the money? She asked, her eyes lighting up with a flicker of hope. No money for you, I said, and no money for Darren. Her face fell. Then what is it? I pay for Mom and Dad's legal defense against the bank fraud charges Darren stuck them with. I said, I pay for a forensic accountant to save their house, and I pay for therapy, for all of you. Bianca stared at me. That is it? You save them, and I get nothing? You get to not go to prison for perjury. I said, And you get to walk away from Darren before he drags you down completely." She laughed. It was a screeching, manic sound. "You are insane. You think I would sign that? You think I would let you be the hero? I am not the hero. B. I am just the one with the checkbook." She stepped close to me. Her breath smelled of mints and fear. "I would rather lose everything than owe you anything." She spat. She turned and stormed down the hall. She kept her word. She didn't sign. Instead, she went home and logged onto social media. She posted a photo of herself crying in her car. The caption was a manifesto. "Today, the legal system failed. Today, money bought silence. My sister, the billionaire, used her high-priced lawyers to crush her own family. She forged evidence. She lied to a judge. She stole my inheritance and laughed in my face. She has destroyed my parents, destroyed my business, and destroyed my faith in humanity, but I will not be silenced. This is just the beginning. Justice for Bianca boycott." The Foster's truth. I sat in my living room and watched the post go live. I waited for the wave of hate. I waited for the comments calling me a monster, but something shifted. The first comment appeared. "Wait, didn't you say last week she promised to pay you? Now you say she stole it? Which is it?" Then another. "If she has high-priced lawyers, why did she offer to pay for your parents' defense? My cousin was at the courthouse. He heard the offer." And another. "I went to the financial literacy workshop she funded. It was legit. She saved me from a loan shark." Maybe there are two sides to this. The cracks were appearing, the inconsistencies in Bianca's story, the shifting amounts, the changing accusations, the sheer volume of her venom were starting to weigh against her. Nina texted me, "Look at the comments. Odds. The tide is turning." I put my phone down. I didn't care about the comments. I didn't care about the tide. I looked around my living room. It was quiet. The rain tapped against the window. But inside, it was warm. The banker's boxes of legal files were still in the hallway, but tomorrow, I would shred them. I had $15 million. I had my freedom, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to exist. My parents wouldn't take the counseling. They would likely lose the house. They would blame me. Bianca would spend the next 10 years trying to convince the world she was a victim. Darren would find a new mark in a new city. I couldn't fix them. I couldn't save them. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The streetlight hummed. The for sale sign would soon go up on the colonial house in the suburbs. But my house, my paid-off, secure fortress of a house, was staying right here. I took a deep breath. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Out for 4 counts. The air tasted like rain and pine. It tasted like silence. And finally, silence wasn't a place to hide. It was a place to live. Thank you for listening to Audrey's story. It is a heavy journey, realizing that sometimes the only way to heal a family wound is to stop trying to stitch it together and simply walk away. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from a rainy city like Larkhaven, or somewhere with a bit more sun? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, boundaries, and the quiet power of truth, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. And I have a question for you. Do you think Audrey should have given them the money to save the house, even after everything they did? Or was walking away the only real choice? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time.